big city in America, something we've worked on for decades to achieve. We achieved it by working with all communities, including our immigrant communities. Our police force is dedicated to building bonds with immigrant New Yorkers. This is the only way we stay safe. We had a reduction in crime in the last year that literally has taken us to the levels we had back in the 1950s. We had the fewest murders in New York City last year that we had had since 1951. This was a result of our police force believing in building a partnership with all New Yorkers, including millions of New Yorkers who come from immigrant backgrounds. And our police force for decades, in both Democratic and Republican administrations, has refused to ask New Yorkers their documentation status when encountering them. And this is one of the reasons why immigrant New Yorkers trust the police and will come forward to the police. God forbid they've been a victim of crime or they're a witness to a crime. Immigrant New Yorkers, documented and undocumented, feel safe going to the police and working with them, and we will never let that change. A year ago, the Trump administration threatened our funding, and we made very clear that that threat was unconstitutional. When the immigration executive order came out, it was aimed at the heart of law enforcement in cities all across America. And my police commissioner said at the time that we would never allow a federal policy to compromise our abilities to keep our people safe. We made very clear that the executive order was unconstitutional, and if the Trump administration wanted to try us, we would meet them in court and beat them there, because we knew in 2012 Justice Roberts, the Chief Justice, issued an opinion that said the federal government cannot hold funding hostage because of the ideological preferences of any administration. So we've been fighting this battle. But look, while we've made our city safer and safer, while we've created an atmosphere where police and neighborhoods could work together, this administration has been trying to undermine those efforts. So why does this matter so much today? Because the very day where we were told there would be a good faith dialogue, a bipartisan dialogue on a crucial issue, infrastructure, that's the day they decided to single out a group of American cities and once again threaten them. This letter explicitly threatens our funding once again, threatens to subpoena our personnel on the very day where, in principle, they were telling us they wanted to have an honest dialogue. This proves there was no intention to have an honest dialogue. I came down here ready to have a serious meeting, and what I got was a publicity stunt from the Trump administration. And it just proves, once again, that they're not trying to work with America's cities, because if they were, it's the first time in a year President Trump invited America's mayors to come and meet with him. And here's what he did to a group of mayors. He said, come over to my house, but I'm going to take your wallet while you're there. It was an immediate affront that showed bad will. So look, it's astounding to me that this opportunity was undermined by the president and his administration. Because if he's serious about his infrastructure plan, he should want to have mayors working with him. But for so many mayors today, it was a slap in the face to our cities and our people. And a lot of mayors, even if they weren't one of the ones listed in this letter, a lot of mayors felt it was a slap in the face to the entire U.S. Conference of Mayors and were unwilling to meet under those circumstances. That's what happened today. I'm really sorry to tell you all this, because this is not what I expected, and this is not what I think any of us as mayors think is normal, and this is not what the American people should think is normal. With that, I want to welcome your questions.
Have you gotten any response from the Trump administration?
There was some kind of press statement, I believe, put out, but again, this has been incoherent. Originally when the meeting was called, some mayors were invited, others weren't. And it was not clear. I know I was not on the original invitation list, and from my point of view, if you're not going to invite me to a meeting, you don't invite me to a meeting. Then they invite and do this the very same morning. So, I mean, the whole approach has been incoherent, but I have not heard any response that makes any sense from the White House.
This is the White House response. Earlier today, the press secretary, Sarah Sanders, said the White House has been very clear. We don't support sanctuary cities. If mayors have a problem with that, they should talk to Congress, the people who passed the laws. What is your response to that?
Then they're simply trying to demonize immigrants as part of their current congressional strategy. I mean, that's what that says to me, if that's the game they're playing. So why, hold on a second, why, if they say they want to have a meeting with mayors, and you've literally got the vast majority of the mayors in this country, of the biggest cities in this country right here for this week only, they really wanted to have that meeting, then why play that game in the middle of it? If this is about their efforts to divide and to play, racial politics, then again, they were never serious about the meeting to begin with.
What does a boycott accomplish?
You can't even call it that, because we came here ready to have a meeting. And again, our cities were affronted purposefully the very same morning. It reminds me when Senator Durbin and Senator Graham went to have a serious conversation about a compromise on the immigration issue. And that was the meeting where Trump used horrible derogatory language towards other nations of the world. And people were outraged. It was a purposeful effort to divide and somehow to destroy what would have been a productive effort at compromise and consensus. Here were mayors, a lot of us don't agree with Donald Trump, but we were willing to go and try and have a dialogue on infrastructure. Why is that the day they single out a group of American cities and once again threaten our funding? It makes no sense.
But will you be telling President Trump what you're telling us now as you gone to the meeting?
If there had not been this obviously premeditated attack on these cities, I would have gone to the meeting. If the meeting is actually a dialogue about infrastructure, here's what I would have said. I would have said, President Trump, you said on the campaign you want a $1 trillion effort. On the campaign trail, President Trump repeatedly said he wanted a $1 trillion infrastructure effort. I would say, let's do that. Show us that plan, show us the money, and let's get to work. What we've seen so far, the leaks that have come out about the infrastructure plan, it sounds like a plan to help financiers and the private sector. It sounds like a lot less than $1 trillion. It sounds like something that's not going to work anytime soon. So I would have challenged and I'd say, live up to your original vision. Put $1 trillion in federal money on the table. Let's get to work. That's what I would have said to him.
What does this do to your relationship with President Trump? You haven't spoken to him very much during his administration. No. Tell me a little bit about your relationship.
Look, I met with the then president-elect days after the election. I attempted to have a dialogue. I had not seen any follow-through on that dialogue from the beginning. A lot of us hoped we would see some honest moderation when he took office. We saw the exact opposite. I have not had any consistent dealings with him since. I have met, however, with numerous members of his administration. And when I've met with the members of his administration, we have had a serious and substantial dialogue, which at least gave me hope that this invitation was a real invitation to dialogue on infrastructure. Again, it makes no sense to me. If I was inviting someone to come meet me, I would not attack them and their city that same morning.
What are you going to do about infrastructure?
Hang on, Marcia, just we finish this. Go ahead.
About infrastructure now, by sitting this out, what are you going to do about your crumbling roads?
We obviously are going to fight for really huge federal investment in infrastructure. I worked on this several years ago with Republican and Democratic members of the House and Senate. We actually got a real increase in the highway bill because a Democratic and Republican mayors got together and pushed the Congress, and we actually found some success. I'm going to go work with the Congress and try and get the changes we need. But if the administration doesn't want to have a serious dialogue, we'll keep working in New York City to fix our own infrastructure, and we'll work with the Congress.
Mr. Mayor, I wonder if you think you could accomplish more for New York City by being inside the tent than outside the tent.
Obviously, Marcia, whenever there's a real dialogue, you want to be in the room trying to have an impact on the policies, but this clearly was not going to be a real dialogue. Again, no one invites someone to a meeting and attacks their city the same morning. It does not make sense.
That this was premeditated, that he knew he was going to do this?
This went out, I don't know what he personally knew, but I knew his administration did something premeditated because this went out first thing in the morning and this is from the Department of Justice, and we can safely say that what Jeff Sessions does is clearly a leading edge of the entire administration. So they did this morning. They could have done any other day. They chose the morning, the very first and only time they have invited America's mayors to come to the White House. They attack literally a list of American cities and say they're going to take away our funding.
So when you saw it, what did you think? What did you do?
I was shocked. It made no sense that this was happening, and I immediately believed it suggested the whole thing was a charade. And I heard that a number of my other colleagues had the same response, had decided, the mayors of New Orleans, Chicago, Los Angeles, had decided they could not go to the meeting under this circumstance, and I joined them.
How many mayors didn't go?
We don't know yet. We have to find out.
Mayor, what will the funding effect of this cut, and also how much money are we talking about?
Look, if you're talking about the burn grants and the other federal funding, this money goes to fight terrorism and to provide our police with support for day-to-day crime fighting. The cuts that have been proposed are at minimum in the tens of millions of dollars and would have a very serious impact on our efforts. What's shocking is we're the safest big city in America. Our crime-fighting efforts are working. You would think the federal government would say, how can we help you do even more, not how can we take away from you. We're also the #1 terror target in America. And this money, in part, supports our anti-terrorism efforts. So it's appalling to me that they would think about defunding the finest police force in the United States of America. And I said, this is one thing when I did have an opportunity to have a dialogue with the then president-elect. I said, on this issue of how police work with immigrants, please talk to the police chiefs of this country. If you don't want to talk to politicians, I can understand it, but talk to Commissioner Jimmy O'Neill. Ask him what's the best way to keep communities safe, and he will say, by showing respect for immigrant communities.